Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Black Hills Information Security Webcast. Joining us today is Ethan and Derek, and they're going to talk about learning to trust AI agents with automation. Because I think that's the big thing, right? Like, because you feel like AI can do the thing, and you probably believe it can do the thing, but I don't know if you trust it to do the thing without you knowing that it's doing the thing and doing the thing without you verifying that it's doing the thing. So I also have trust issues when it comes to AI. And so I'm glad you're doing today's webcast. You're taking the research that you've developed here at Black Hills Information Security, using it practically over and over again in all the research that you've done. Also, you're a part of the AI Security Ops podcast, which we'll drop the link to if you want to continue to learn more about AI security and how they coincide together or don't in many ways. Join us for that podcast. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We got Ethan and Derek. I'm going to turn it over to them. They're going to talk for like the next 50 some minutes. Then we'll do some Q&A at the end, and then that will be it. All right, Ethan, Derek, you ready?
Sure.
Ready. All right, I'm heading backstage. Good luck.
Sweet. Jason, I think you came up with a better title for our webcast, AI Trust Issues.
Well, I mean, information security folks generally have trouble trusting, well, anything, right? Because I think the very nature of evaluating risk for a living makes you learn that maybe you shouldn't trust things.
Yeah, for sure. So why are we doing this webcast? So Derek and I both have spent quite a bit of time working with AI agents. Derek much more than me.
I don't know about that.
So my journey really started in earnest probably around December. That's when I installed a coding agent locally and started playing with it and stuff. So really, I mean, we're all kind of new at this. I just realized that I had some hangups when I first started. Like, these are the things, the trust issues that I have. And not trust, just trust, but like there were several roadblocks I had trouble getting over, and I just thought it would be a good topic for sharing, because if I have these issues, and maybe other people have the same kind of thoughts around AI and automation. So our primary experience has been with Claude through Black Hills, where Black Hills kind of standardized on using Claude code. But I personally started, when I first tried it out, using Opencode. Derek, I think maybe you've tried a couple others, but those are kind of your main ones too.
Yeah, so I guess I like to. So basically, I teach a class on AI and information security, and in the last teach, I kind of framed it this way. I think that, in 2025, folks are certainly getting more and more familiar with like a chatbot interface. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly the workflow that I had in 2025 up until about, I'd say, October or November. So I didn't have a whole lot more experience than you, but it's new for everybody. I think it was early in 2025 when Claude Code first came out. So coding agents in general are, in terms of IT years, are kind of new, right? And so my workflow last year was mainly go to a chatbot, and I like Claude for coding to ask it, hey, or to get it to give me code for like whatever project I was working on. And I would copy and paste it from the chat interface into my own IDE. And then I also like had an integrated like inline IDE, and then I would do all of the like testing and debugging, and then go back and forth, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? But somewhere around October, I realized that, I can do all of this like with Claude Code. And then it starts to handle a lot more of the workflow for you. And then it was somewhere, I kind of took a break from all technology over the holidays because I was working on remodeling a bathroom. And when I came back from Christmas break, Claude Code was all the rage, because I think that what happened is Anthropic released a model, Opus 4.5, or is 4.5, I think, somewhere in October. And people didn't really have a chance to start playing with it until over the holidays, and realized just how capable not only the model, but the, we'll call it scaffolding code around the model, was. And now I think 2026 is going to be like kind of the year of agents.
Yeah, for sure. So to that end, we have experience with the tools that we have used. There's a ton out there. Like Derek said, we're moving, this space is moving so fast. We obviously don't have experience with everything. We'll talk about some of the things we know about. And then we'll talk about things we have direct experience with, just to give you an idea of, what's out there. So maybe to start, what even is a coding agent? So Derek mentioned, hey, ChatGPT, go into the web interface, copy and paste stuff back and forth. Hey, that works great. Like, why do I need something else? So I think Anthropic released this coding agent idea in their Claude Code, and it's pretty powerful. It couples kind of that same workflow that you were doing in ChatGPT. Instead of having to copy and paste back and forth, they're like, okay, you're going to run a program on your local system that interfaces with the LLM, the AI, and that AI can respond back with specific instructions of, hey, run these commands on the system. So basically it gives it the ability to actually do real things on your system, like look at files, modify files. And I mean, that's kind of in essence there. And alongside it is a loop. So it can iterate and do things like over and over. And the other term I've heard is kind of an agent harness or agent harness. I don't know. Derek, do you have anything else to add on?
Yeah, so I've heard agent harness too. Yeah, I think the big difference is like, so you have a chat bot where you go and you put in a web interface like your query, your question, your prompt into the chatbot, and you've probably heard the term like prompt engineering, right? Where the better your prompt, the better your output would be. And I mean, that's true with any LLM for sure. And so to get really good coding results, I would have to have a pretty sophisticated prompt. And for example, I would have to say, here's your identity and purpose. Here's the scope of the work we're doing. Here's step by step what I want you to do. Here's the output that I expect. And, that kind of is kind of like an upfront software design document, essentially, that I'm giving to the chatbot. What makes the agent different is I can more loosely describe the outcome that I want, and then look at it as like that really specialized prompt is now baked into the loop and the code along with your prompt to give you better results to accomplish your goal. So instead of like having a really detailed and structured prompt, now I can just describe the outcome that I want, and the coding agent will go off and go through a loop and end up either giving me the output or stopping and saying, hey, I have a clarifying question that I would like to ask. And so I think that's kind of like the big main difference in my opinion.
Yeah. So it's basically able to iterate itself and improve its own like context engineering or prompt
without you having to go back and forth with it.
Exactly. Because you've given it extra abilities to query external sources like files or MCPs, or we'll get into some of that more. But first off, so what are some examples of coding agents? So we've already mentioned Claude Code. That was kind of the first popular one for sure. Anthropic makes it available. You do need a subscription to utilize Claude Code. So they've got different subscription tiers, and that's actually, spoiler, one of the first hurdles that I had. I'm kind of a frugal person, and I didn't really want another subscription. So we'll go over some other options. But Claude has a CLI interface, but then they've got a desktop application as well. And some of the other options, we've got OpenAI, obviously the first big, company behind ChatGPT. They've also got a CLI that you can install. They also have a desktop application that you can use, which does largely the same thing. It's just, hey, if you're not comfortable in the CLI, it's just a little different interface. Google jumped on board with their Gemini CLI. And I think this is the first one that actually allows you to use it for free. So the other OpenAI, Claude, and Anthropic, I think require some basic level of subscription. And I think Gemini bakes in some free usage. So if you're comfortable with Google, that could be an option. GitHub actually has their own CLI, and there's plenty of others. I'm just going over like the main ones that you might run into. But yeah, GitHub, so backed by Microsoft, has their own coding agent as well. And then we get to Opencode, which is kind of what we're going to focus on mainly. So Opencode similarly has a CLI, has a beta desktop application. But because Opencode is open source and not tied to any one provider, a lot of development has gone behind it, like in the broader community ecosystem wise. So there's lots of plugins and wrappers around Opencode that all sorts of stuff. And we'll show you one of those next here. So OpenWork is kind of a play on Opencode. They're not related, but OpenWork does use Opencode behind the scenes to run its desktop application. So Anthropic released something called Claude Cowork, which is kind of a middle ground between what we're talking about, the chat, the CLI agent coding interface, and what Derek was talking about with ChatGPT. So Claude Cowork is kind of a middle ground of, hey, it can actually do stuff, like interesting stuff, execute stuff on your system, but it's not quite as daunting to get started with if you're not familiar with the CLI. So this brings us to our first tip. There's a lot of options out there. There's more every single day.
It can be overwhelming for sure.
It's overwhelming. Just pick one and start. Like if you need a recommendation, start with Opencode. If you're more comfortable with any of the others, by all means, just pick one, start learning it. A lot of the things that you learn for one those same concepts can transfer over to another as you go. And then I think Derek, you mentioned an IDE earlier, but like your code editor. There's also code editors that have this AI stuff baked in, and those are also options if you're more comfortable with that, like VS Code or Cursor. Those are kind of well-known ones. But
yeah, if I had to give a recommendation, there's ways to get started for free, and then there's ways to get started for cheap, and then there's ways to spend a crap ton of money.
Yeah, we were joking about your runaway Bedrock usage earlier.
Well, I mean, I meant to do it, but yeah. But even so, like, in my journey, like I started with Claude Code because I was lucky enough to be able to use it through work and learn the technology on work's dime instead of my dime. And it's kind of a lucky thing. I know not everyone is in that scenario. And then I was using it with the API, and then they, we were basically just tying an API key to Claude Code. And then they changed their subscription model. And so now for Anthropic, it's like something like $25 a month, and you get a certain like level of usage. And I don't know exactly what that level is. It's something I think like 50 queries in a 5-hour time or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really great to get started.
Yeah. And that's a good point. There's kind of two paradigms with how you can use AI beyond the free tier. There's API based usage where they bill you based on the number of tokens that you're sending, like kind of the raw currency or the raw metric that LLMs use. And then there's the subscription models, which kind of smooths that over. You just pay a certain set amount each month.
Definitely.
But you get a certain level of usage then.
Yeah, so definitely with Anthropic, I think the API is more expensive than the subscription for what you get.
For sure. If you're using it heavily,
if you're using it, I would use the API for like business and work related like billable kind of stuff if that's what you wanted to do. And then they have like a max subscription where it's $200 a month, which most people are like, holy crap, $200 a month. You don't really need that until you start simultaneously building multiple things and running multiple, we'll call them agents, right? That's when it starts to get expensive. When you go from like, okay, I'm using this one coding agent and now I've expanded past, well, while this coding agent is doing this, I'm going to work on this and I'm going to work on this and this. And next thing you know, you have like an army of things going on. But that's down the
more
road.
advanced.
Yes, it's more advanced. And so for most people, if you're not opposed to the $20, $25 a month, that's what I would suggest. I saw someone post in chat as the memes were scrolling by that they were using Codex and really like it. That's what I hear, right? I hear that Codex is really good. I haven't really like used it a lot because basically it's one of those things where if something's working for you, you kind of keep using it, right? Until it doesn't work or doesn't do something for you. But if you were trying to get started personally on the cheap, I think Opencode is probably the best way to go.
Let's go ahead and show how to do that, right? So okay, I'm gonna do a couple things quick I'm gonna run this in a Docker container, but these first parts are optional. We'll get to more sandboxing and
more of why I would be paranoid and want to run this in a Docker container.
Yeah. All right, so we got to this point. Let me go back to Opencode just so you can see where this comes from. So Opencode installation instructions, this command. So Derek, I think you would agree with this, but we recommend using these coding agents either through a desktop application, which probably takes care of a lot of the stuff for you on the back end, or if you're going to do it via CLI, you should either do it on a Mac in Linux or in WSL.
I think you have to actually.
Some of them I think can work on Windows natively, but you're kind of fighting against the stream there.
Your mileage may vary.
So you got a couple options on Windows, and Docker is an option across all of these.
Yeah,
but WSL is one of them. But
so I think Mac users have an advantage at the moment, right? And that's just because of the Apple's foresight, I guess, of having the M chips, the M1 chips, or the M series chips, basically having onboard. It's not GPU, like an AI inference chip. And so, okay, so one thing about like AI technologies, just kind of at a high level, you have training.
I'm gonna run the Opencode installer in the background while you talk. I want to tell people what I'm doing here. So
Ethan's installing Opencode while we're doing this. So you have training an LLM or training an AI model, and then you have running it, and that would be inference. So if you hear somebody say inference, you're actually running the model. The neat thing about Macs is that the memory that you have on your M series Mac is unified with the AI chip, the inference chip. It's the metal platform shader. And so that means like however much RAM you have in your system is how much you could use for running an AI model. And so if you have 64 gig of RAM on your Mac, you could run a local model and not have to worry about using someone's remote model. And so when we say you're getting started for free with Opencode, when Ethan launches Opencode here, he's going to pick a model. Most of the time getting started, that's going to be running somewhere in the cloud.
Yes. So this is what Opencode looks like when you launch it, and you can immediately just start talking to it, sign up or anything. They are amazing because they have just some free usage built in. So if you want to get started, it's like super low friction.
Which is actually really cool because, I mean, you have to run this on GPUs, which means they're offering for free for people to get started the ability to run a certain level of usage. It looks like it said 6% usage for free. To kind of, get you kind of started. That means that they're running their free models up somewhere where they're talking to it through an API.
And so after you ask your initial question, you get kind of this two-pane interface here. So on the right, you can see a little bit about your context, how many tokens, just metrics that have gone through. And then there's this little getting started box. It even says, hey, Opencode includes free models. You can start immediately, or you can connect a provider. So if we want to look at see what that looks like, So if I do switch model, these are several models that just come for free in Opencode. Now, that being said, I suspect that they're probably training on your data. So usually when stuff is free, that
Yeah,
means they're
we
using
haven't got to
you
the
as,
privacy part yet.
yeah. So, well, I mean, that's part of the trust,
Yeah,
right?
right, exactly.
How do you trust the providers too? So,
That's actually, we
just
should
know
talk about that then.
yeah, just know if it's being provided for free, your data is likely being used for training.
Well, and in
Unless
some
you,
providers' cases, even if you're paying for them, they're going to use your data.
yeah,
And
it's usually an option to
you.
toggle off, but if you're paying,
Well, so for the way I understand their license agreement, and I swear these license agreements are more difficult to understand sometimes than they should be. The way I understand Anthropic at the moment is that if you are paying as an individual $25 or $200 a month or whatever, they still say that they can use your data for training.
yeah.
Where if you're a company on a business account, then so a team or an enterprise account, then they're not. For I understand OpenAI, if you're paying them, they're not using your data to train. If you're using it for free, they use it to train. So I mean, I think that's like the biggest thing that security professionals like question, right? It's like, where is my data going?
Yeah. All right. Well, here's free. Free for the price of your data. The built-in providers are pretty good here. So you've got Opencode has a subscription that you can pay for. I think that Opencode Go is $5 a month. So if you're running out of free usage, or I guess I don't know if Opencode Go uses your data for training. Maybe not. Maybe that would be another benefit of getting the subscription level. But that's an option to get started. OpenAI and GitHub Copilot, I know, are kosher. They approve of using their subscriptions with Opencode, with like this harness, instead of you don't have to use their own CLI. Anthropic you can use with an API key. So we talked about the two levels of subscription. So if you go with the per month subscription, like $20 a month, their pro plan, max plan. Anthropic does not like you using that with anything else other than Claude Code.
Yeah.
And they will ban you. But you can use it through an API key. And then Google, I think, is similar in this probably sticks to API key. There are plugins that work around this for Opencode, but they also come with disclaimers of use this at your own risk, because companies have different stances on whether they allowed you to use their subscription, like with the set quota with other CLIs. All right, so what did I do here? This is one of the tips later, but I just kind of asked it introspectively, like, hey, what can you do for me? Like, this is a little more specific, but I know that because we talked about what an agent harness is, or a coding agent is, these have like tools on the background. They can actually do things. So I asked it, what tools do you have available? And it answered. So you can see it's got basic tools for working with files, read, write, edit, searching. It has the ability to interact with the web. So if you give it a URL and say, hey, go to this URL and use it for reference, it can go fetch that page, or it can just search the web for you. It has tasks and to-dos. So that kind of, if you give it a bunch of stuff to do, it can kind of internally manage that without worrying about running out of, like, forgetting its tasks when it runs out of context or anything. Skills, we can talk about later. And then Bash is probably the most interesting one, because that gives it arbitrary command execution on your system, which sounds really scary. We'll talk about that in a bit, but that allows it to also be really, really useful. All right. So that's how you would get started. And if you want more resources, or like, hey, I really want to stick on free models as long as I can, but I'm running out of usage out of just the built-in stuff, there's this list of awesome free models. Like, there's providers that give you quotas for free, just again for the price of your data. But you can sign up for some of these and get a like 50 queries an hour or something like that. Like, so that is an option. And then Derek also mentioned, oh, this one. Okay. So with those free ones, there's also like a bunch of people are on the free ones. So rate limiting applies and peak usage applies. So it might be slow at certain types of the day. So this is a tool that you can use. You plug in your API for whatever free thing that you set up. Which ones are the fastest right now? So you can do a lot to work around paying money if you want to. And Derek mentioned running stuff locally, running models locally. So if you have the hardware to do it, you can also do that. And this is a tool that you can run that basically tells you what open weight models will actually work, will fit on your hardware. So it like profiles how much RAM you have, what kind of GPU you have, and it'll give you recommendations of, does this actually fit? How well is it going to run? And this is a tool you can just run locally to get that. Or even easier, go to this website and it does the same thing using like a web technology to access your GPU, but it gives you the models and how fast they're likely to run.
Yeah, there was a question in Discord, like what local model would you recommend?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if we're talking about code agents, all right, if we're talking specifically coding agents, I think Qwen 3 Coder Next I've had really good luck with, but I will also admit that I haven't really built anything as serious as I've done with Claude with an open weight model. Most of the open weight models at the moment are Chinese in origin. And I mean, that might be a concern for some folks. I think if I'm not talking about going off to like using a service that's hosted in China with these models, but if you're downloading the open weight model through like Ollama or, LM Studio or whatever you're using locally, I use Ollama because it just seems to work really well for what I want to do. I've had luck with Ollama and Qwen 3.5 Coder Next, and it is on my list to actually try and kick the tires a lot more like I do with Opencode or with Claude. But again, it's a being productive with a tool that versus trying out new thing kind of thing. But I would say the Qwen 3.5 would be a good choice.
Yeah, I would agree. With the caveat, it moves so fast. It's changing all the time. But
oh yeah,
in the current state, I see people really impressed with Qwen 3.5, and there's different levels of parameters and quantizations.
Yeah, and the LM fit thing is really, really handy because, I mean, if you're lucky enough to have 64 gig of RAM on your Mac, or just because you have GPUs or whatever, the bigger model you can run, the better, in my opinion, in most cases.
All right, so we told you how to get started, how to get over that hurdle, like, it seems daunting to even start. We've gone on over the pricing, like I don't want to pay for another subscription. So some of you might still be thinking, well, why do I even need this? I don't code. Why do I need a coding agent? Well, it turns out the coding agent is maybe too specific. I mentioned earlier, it has the tool access. It has access to Bash and several other things, but it can do anything on your system. Like, it's beyond coding. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, here's a good example. We have an AI rig at work that has two R6000s in it, two 48 gig GPUs, 96 gig of RAM. And it updated, and the kernel module was broken again on the driver, so I couldn't load any models. And it's such a pain to fix for anyone who's gone through that before. Like, it usually takes me a bit to remember, like, hey, what do you do? Let me Google this. This time, the last time it happened, I said, hey, Claude, use my SSH access into this machine and go fix the driver, please. And like 5 minutes later, it's like, yep, everything's good to go. Test it out. Ready to go. And I was like, yep. So systems administration, another example recently, or another example I use in my class is I have some compromised or a compromise in some an SSH compromise in some log files. And I actually just did this before coming in here. I used Quinn 3.5 Coder and then also one of the free Opencode models and said, hey, look at these Linux logs and tell me if you see any signs of compromise. And both of those found the compromised account. So log analysis is another one, especially when you have like a lot amount of data. Here's one that doesn't have anything to do with security. That's kind of fun. My daughter's a competitive swimmer and she came into the wall and hit her thumb and kind of bent it back and she thought she broke her thumb. And so we went to the doctor and they took x-rays. And it didn't look broken, but it was the weekend, and they gave me a CD of the X-rays and said, "Take it to your orthopedic doctor." And so I got home and I wanted to look at the X-rays, and I put it. The only CD-ROM I have left is in my Windows desktop, and I put it in there, and it was just like an installer program for some janky like viewer and DICOM file. So I copied all of those off and went to Claude Code and said, "Hey, can you help me view these image files?" And like I swear, 60 seconds later, I had like a little web app to view the files. I could zoom in, everything. And so you say you might not be a software developer, you don't need a coding agent. Well, like you basically can have it be your software developer. Like I want this thing.
You have one on demand now.
Yeah, you have one on demand now, right? And so that's really the power is. And, you know, like for log analysis, you could say, hey, if anybody's ever looked at a M365 log file and it's that CSV JSON nonsense, right? If you have one of those, just have your coding agent go whip you up a script and start to analyze it for you. And then you can just do it over and over again every time you need to look at one.
So this isn't what exactly what Derek is talking about, but I saw it earlier today and I thought it was such a cool demo. I put it in here, but someone posted on Reddit, hey, I had Claude make me a molecular or protein like viewer in the terminal. And so
That is
yeah,
so cool.
I mean, you can just have custom bespoke software like made for you. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So the other example that I have was I got an audio file or a video from someone and I couldn't hear anything. I didn't. So I tried the usual things, tried different systems, different programs. And then I was like, I even asked the sender, like, hey, does the audio work for you? And they're like, yeah, it works here. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. So I prompted Claude, hey, here's my file. Can you analyze the audio and determine why I can't hear it? And so this is just an interesting thing to show like how Claude responds to this type of this is Claude code. So at first it decides, hey, I'm gonna try to inspect the file stream, the audio stream on this file with a tool that I know about. Well, so then it runs bash, the bash tool we were talking about. So it tries to run ffprobe a couple times, different usages, and it comes back, oh, it's not found. So it just guessed that like, oh, this tool would be available. So this is maybe a common theme that you'll see, but like AIs can still hallucinate, can still get things wrong, can still just like assume things are there. And but it gets back here's where the loop comes in. Like it gets the feedback, oh, this command isn't found. So it decides, oh, I have to change my approach. So let me check what's available. And it says it was going to decide to install it, but I don't think it ended up actually installing it. So what it does do, I should mention, so every time, we'll get into this later with permissions, but every time before it ran a bash command, Claude by default will prompt you, hey, do you want to allow this command to run? So I was watching this because I didn't actually want it to install anything on my system unless it did it a certain way that, like, that using the package manager I use and whatnot. But so it looked for other tools that it could maybe use to help me solve my problem. Found a couple, ran those, got results back, decided that wasn't enough. So it says, let me dig deeper into the file structure. It wrote just a bespoke Python script to to unpack the binary structure of the video file and analyze the audio streams. Like it knew enough from its training data, like how an MP4 file was structured, and it just went straight to binary unpack. And probably not the most efficient or correct way of doing this.
Well, that's because you
But
didn't let it install software.
exactly, yeah. So it will try to work around constraints that it encounters. I'm surprised it didn't, try to install stuff, but maybe it's because it saw that I didn't have brew. And
Yeah, and so what you're seeing on the screen here is essentially that iterative loop that we described before. Like, so
Yep.
it's basically going through and looping through and trying to solve the problem, the task that you gave it.
So eventually it decided that it had done enough that it was going to respond to me with its results. So it says, hey, there doesn't seem to be any audio. Like I did some further analysis later, but like basically the audio track was at 0. Like there's no variation in the data there. So like however I got the file, like didn't have the audio. But then it gave recommendations like, hey, to fix this, you could try installing the thing. So it didn't even Derek, like you said, we were talking about earlier, but sometimes it will just install stuff for you or prompt to install stuff for you.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, this time it didn't, probably again, because I don't have brew installed. So it didn't know how to do it, but it gave me the commands to run. And so then I tried those. It didn't work. We went on another round just to see, but anyway, that's
So the question in this Claude action is running on a local rig. No, I think what Ethan was showing was probably just Claude code and using the subscription. I would imagine.
yeah. It was a Claude subscription. What I was showing was just like the transcript. So like I wasn't doing it live. It was just an export of what we had done together.
It was an HTML version. Like it was either a plugin or you just said, "Hey, make HTML out of this transcript." So
yeah,
either way would work probably.
It was a tool. Yeah. So this is open work, which I mentioned earlier. It's kind of like Claude. Actually, I'll show you both. So we've got Claude Code or Claude Desktop, I should say. The naming schemes are just particular, but this is the chat interface, and then this would be like if you're in the web GUI, chatting with Claude.
This is the new.
The chat bot.
This is the new. I need to Google something, right?
Yeah,
I need to ask
exactly.
the AI like a
And then
thing. I got a one-shot thing I'm going to ask.
They have a code tab, which is similar to if you open it up in your terminal, and you can interact with it that way. And then they've got co-work, which is, I guess, more of a non-technical friendly interface, but I think largely does the same thing as
So I think the fun fact about co-work is Anthropic says that they coded it over the course of 10 days using Claude Code almost exclusively, which is kind of fun. And now it's like a flagship product.
Yeah.
The idea is it essentially would bring Claude Code to folks who are afraid of the terminal or the command line interface. And I mean, it's not, there's no worries about, if you don't like the command line and you like to point and click, more power to you. I think this is,
some of our coworkers prefer
absolutely.
the
I'm not being like, I prefer the command line just because that's what I've been doing all my life is the command line. Right. And so it's just a preference thing, but the power is like for like quote normal office workers, like, hey, take these 10 spreadsheets and give me, 10 insights out of the spreadsheets kind of thing. And so it'll go off and do that the iterative loop in the background and then give you what you asked.
Yeah. And just to show off, I already pre-prompted this, but this is open work, which I mentioned earlier, uses Opencode on the back end. So like this is Claude that I was just showing. Claude Desktop is tied to my work subscription, but open work here, I just downloaded it, opened it, and there's no subscription. I didn't have to sign up for anything. It's using the free Opencode usage. So, I mean, there's limits. Obviously, you won't be able to automate everything in your life, but it's enough to get started and to show proof of value of like real work. So I just showed, I wanted to see like, hey, can you actually execute stuff on my system? I said, can you list the files in my home directory? And it does. Like these are what's in your home directory. And oh yeah. So I did this the other day. So I'll run this again. I told it run Apple. Maybe I'm curious if I just say open the calculator. We'll see what it does. It might still use AppleScript because this is in our context history.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see it just opened up calculator on my system. So it can do stuff, right? That's the whole point. All right, so you got something installed. You've got it in front of you. Great. Yeah, I'm in the desktop GUI, or I'm in the command line, and you're staring at a blank screen. Like, how do I start? What do I even do? Ask the agent. Start using it as a partner, like someone who knows how to do something, and you can ask them, like, okay, how do I start? Like, here's what I want to do, or what can you do for me? Like, just go back and forth and learn kind of what it can do, and you'll slowly start to realize what it can do is just broader and broader.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it basically can operate on your computer, and the more access you give it, the more it can do for you in a lot of respects. But I think that when you want to make changes, like let's say that you wanted to say, I don't want you to ever read any of my SSH keys in my .ssh directory, I would actually just tell the coding agent, go make that change. Like, Claude, go make this change, and it'll go modify the JSON for you. I mean, you can hand modify it, but anyone who's, if you've not had experience hand modifying JSON and adding something, that might be problematic because it has to be pretty specific, right?
We're jumping ahead to our permissions slide.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, right? So, but I mean, the idea is that you can essentially just use it as your your assistant to do whatever it is you're doing on your computer. And what I found to be very useful is be specific in what you ask, right? Like to say, I want to do this specific thing. So for example, you have a bunch of PHP source code. Just don't say, hey, go analyze this source code and find vulnerabilities in it. Instead, what you would want to say is, in this directory, I have a PHP source code. Go off on the internet and do research and come up with a plan to find vulnerabilities in the source code. Still not like a real complex prompt, a well thought out prompt, but being very clear and specific in what you are asking to do.
Yeah. So this Derek just touched on a whole bunch of stuff that's coming up. So setting the stage. The next hurdle, trust issue that we're encountering is like, hey, how do I even believe what the AI is telling me? Like, I'm sure everyone here who has used a chatbot has had it hallucinate or confidently answer your question, and turns out like the information it gave you just completely wrong, like just incorrect. So how do you combat that? How do you recognize that? And that part of it comes with experience. One thing for coding agents in particular, because keep in mind that the LLM that they're trained on was at point in time, and stuff is changing constantly, right? So one of the tools we showed earlier is it has access to go search the web or pull recent documentation. So you can tell it to do that. Like, if you don't tell it to do that, maybe it'll decide to, or maybe it'll just it convince itself that it knows enough to give you an answer, but it'll be an outdated answer. So if you know, hey, the latest greatest documentation is here, give it a link to that and be like, hey, go read this documentation, and given that, tell me how to do this thing.
Yeah, I have an exact real world example that happened here recently at Black Hills for this. So we also, some of our folks historically have used Copilot, not GitHub Copilot, but the Microsoft Copilot that is
naming things.
I know, right? That is the the base Copilot chatbot offering that you get with your Microsoft service. And I won't be mean, I'll just say that Copilot offering is limited and not very good, because of limitations that Microsoft has put on it, and lots of different reasons that we don't have to worry about. But they were asking they're trying to troubleshoot TCP 445 outbound from DigitalOcean, and we're having an issue, and Copilot kept telling them that it had to be the firewall and was telling it wrong information. And I did exactly what Ethan has on the screen with Claude. I said, go off and get the latest DigitalOcean documentation and tell me if they started blocking port 445 outbound, because they didn't in the past for sure. And sure enough, Claude went off and, baked and percolated for a couple minutes and came back and said, no, it's definitely not blocked outbound. And so Copilot was confidently right in its wrong answer, where Claude went off and did a bunch of testing, and went and, research rather, and went and read the doc, so to speak, and found out, no, it's got to be something else.
So one issue that you might have is you get in a conversation, and you probably experienced with the chatbot too, it's giving you wrong answers, and you keep telling it, no, you're wrong, and this is why, and it'll say, oh, absolutely, you're absolutely correct, and then it'll go off and tell you the exact same thing again, or it'll get it wrong again later in the conversation. So one kind of mental model analogy I like to think about is Plinko. So if you ever seen the Price is Right, or it's basically a pegboard where you drop a token and it bounces back and forth to the bottom. So if you think about kind of that as your conversation. So at the bottom, you've got these cups that some of them are desirable, they're worth more points. This is a desirable outcome. Maybe this group is all high point values. But then over here, this is 0, or reset your points or whatever, bad outcomes. So where you start, where you start by placing your Plinko chip is kind of how you start your conversation, and every subsequent message that you send to AI. So in LLM, when you're interacting with even a chatbot, it seems like it's a whole conversation and you're going back and forth. But from the LLM side, it's all one shot. It does inference pass through the LLM given your conversation history. So that's how it keeps its state, is because it sends your entire conversation history all over again. So as you're getting a longer and longer conversation, you're moving down, and you're you're placing your Plinko chip lower and lower to try to aim towards your goal. But if you're constantly getting wrong answers, going lower over the wrong answers isn't going to help you, right? So that's where it might be better to back up, start over, start fresh with a new context, no conversation history. Let's take a different approach. Let's do something differently, based on the lessons learned from. And you can even ask the AI in your previous conversation, where everything is wrong, say, hey, you keep getting this wrong. Tell me why. Where did we go wrong? Tell me how to start a better conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely used AI to give me prompts to make my prompt better and gotten better results. But yeah, what Ethan's describing is all happening in what's known as the context window. And so that's basically, look at that as you're the entirety of your conversation in that session with the large language model. And so if you're getting bad results, it's always a good idea to try and start over and get better results.
So there's a lot to learn. Derek just mentioned context. There's a lot of different terms that go into coding agent environments. I kind of go ahead.
I was gonna say, this could almost be a 4-hour workshop. I mean, it's 48 minutes in. And you're like, man,
yeah,
we just gotta kind of scratch the surface a little bit.
I think I've got more than we can get through.
Probably. That's okay.
Give some demos, but
we can ask everybody if they would like a 4-hour workshop.
Yeah. Go
for a workshop, please. All right, so there we go. Well, at least
so these concepts I kind of grouped into different categories, how it made sense for me. Your agent has access to tools, and whether those be the local tools that I was showing earlier, or you can connect things called MCP servers that let it interact with remote APIs. Those are tools. Those are connections that it can use to do real work and interact and integrate between different areas. And then you got your context. So I mentioned your chat history. That's part of your context. There's something called agents.markdown, or in the Claude world, it's claude.markdown.md. That's instructions that are sent every single time. You got agents and sub-agents. And these are all just terms that you'll hear and see thrown out. There's skills, there's slash commands. All of these fall into ways of constructing your context. So if you invoke an agent, it's just a markdown file with instructions that, okay, now this loop has these instructions to start with. Skills, just markdown files with instructions in it. And the agent knows of the existence of skills, and it can decide when to use them. It can decide when to go read that skill file and pull in and follow those instructions. Slash commands are very similar. It's just a pre-filled prompt. I mean, honestly, I think Anthropic has kind of combined skills and slash commands in some way, but very, very similar. And then you've got your config. So this is the actual configuration for the agent harness, the program that you're running. So this isn't so much getting the AI to do a certain thing. It's like setting boundaries, setting preferences and configuration around the actual tooling, the harness. And this is where you can have hard security boundaries, like setting permissions or putting in hooks to verify or check or deny things that the AI attempts to get the agent harness to do. All right, so context usage, I think I'll show that real quick. But back to the Opencode example demo I showed earlier, you can see it's talking about context and how many tokens are used, and it's saying 6%. What does that mean? Well, context window is limited. Like on the back end, there's a hard limit that the provider sets of how many tokens you can send at once. And that's your context window. So if we go to Claude, I'm going to run context just because it has a nice visualization, and you'll see a bunch of stuff that I have installed. But if I scroll up, so this is a brand new conversation. I haven't sent it anything other than /context. And you can see like this part here is the system prompt. So the coding agent, your harness, has a system prompt that it just comes baked with. That takes up context, that every single conversation starts with that. There are ways you can like clear that or replace it or add to it with the command line flags, but that's there by default. So custom agents. So I mentioned agents, just a markdown file, right? Well, those at least the existence of those, Claude has to know about them because it has to know when to use an agent, when to use a skill. So those definitions of agents and skills are also in your context. Like it's something that's just taking up room. And then you've got messages, which again, there'll be more messages if I was going back and forth in an existing conversation. And then it's a bunch of free space. So I started this Claude specifically with a 200,000 token limit. There's models with a million token limits as well. So
yeah,
this
so
is just
there's a comment. It seems like the LLM providers will be able to manage context automatically. Well, they kind of are, right? Because the 200K limitation that you see here for Sonnet 4.6 is a limitation on the provider side.
Yeah.
That means that for your session, like and it has to do with how much compute that they have. And because when you have a conversation with an LLM, that LLM is running, but there's like a layer, the embedding layer of turning your words into numbers that is also running on the GPU. And so like their limit to the context, because they have to provide this for all their users. So it has to run on a GPU. And so it's only been here recently that Anthropic's had to compute where Opus 4.6 now has 1 million tokens. And so real quick, backing up, a token just means a word or a stem of a word. Like could be, typically it's going to be a word, or if it's a compound word, like the parts of that word instead of like a character, right? And so we measure this in tokens. And then I think that both Grok and Gemini are up to a 2 million token window at this point. So
nice. Thank you for that. By the way, Derek teaches a class on AI security.
yeah.
But yeah, to your point about managing the context. So the agent harness does, manage a little bit. There's plugins that can help you like manage your context better. But notice these X's here. And the key says auto compact buffer. Well, this is still within our limit, but once our context usage crosses this, your mini harnesses will go into what's called auto compaction, where it will take all of your context so far, send it to the LLM and say, summarize this for me, like summarize this text, summarize this conversation. And how exactly they do it is going to vary from harness to harness. But the whole point is it's a lossy operation. So that if you ever experience using a coding agent and it forgets things, this is likely why it's dropped out of the context. And there are so many projects and so many people trying to solve this problem right now. If you go searching for memory, you're going to find so many options. So it is an open problem, but there's tons of solutions out there. No one's emerged as the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think my best advice at this point in time is if you can afford it, use one that has a million token context window. Because ever since Opus has made the switch, like I've noticed a dramatic difference. It has been a lot better. Also, kind of keep an eye on it, and then like try and gate like time your work to where, okay, here's a good place to like go ahead. Like I'll often say write a checkpoint file and then I'll compact manually instead of letting it auto compact. And then I'll like make
there's
sure
different strategies.
Yeah, there's different strategies. And like Ethan was saying, this is like, you know, if you're feeling like this is a lot and this is overwhelming, like it's okay. We are all like basically just now getting started. And I think somebody just like had Daniel Miessler's personal AI infrastructure go by on the chat, right? Daniel Miessler actually had a quote here recently on X that I really liked. He basically paraphrased, like, look, if you feel like that you're behind and like, you know, all these people are ahead of you, we're really not, right? Like we're all now starting at this new agentic wave, like at the beginning. And at best, people have a couple months on you. And so the best advice I get is don't panic and just dive in and start using it and get familiar with it, because it'll really make you like a more productive kind of thing. Just don't feel like you're behind. You're right on time.
So this next section is more best practices of how to use an agent to like do meaningful things, to work on a project, like maybe more than just, you know, hey, go do this isolated task. Like it's something that's going to take a lot of steps, requires a lot of planning. You may have heard us mention planning. So you saying, hey, go do this big long project, and you just tell the AI like go do that with very, you know, one prompt, just go, is kind of like giving it a signpost, like go that direction, like head there. Maybe it'll get there, but likely it's going to get lost or go off the trail along the way. So a better way is what's called plan mode. So most of the agents are going to have some sort of plan mode that you can enter into, where it's not going to take action. It's purely about going back and forth chatting with you until the idea is cemented, like you've designed a specification or something. And once you have that specification, you review it, like you agree, like, hey, this is the best way, this is what we want to do. That's kind of like giving it a map. So both it's got a direction and it's got a map to know like how to get there. One step further is, especially if you're working in software, is the ability to allow it to check itself, to correct itself, like to know where it is. That's kind of like giving it a compass. Like if it can run a command against to verify that the work that it's done is correct, it can know where it's at, like in addition to, you know, where to go next.
Yeah, and that plan mode, if you look at it, that's essentially like making that like big complicated prompt that you're putting into a chatbot. It's basically doing it's and it's all about providing the LLM more context for solving the problem.
So I've seen a lot of people talk about spend most of your time in planning and then the least amount of time in execution, and that will get you the best results. And so Derek, I think this is from your class, but
it didn't come out that bad.
Yeah, it's all right. We're talking about, we removed the background and it kind of made the text all wonky. Not the concept. The concept's good, but it's basically a loop. Like you're iterating. You're iterating with the agent. The agent is iterating on its own instructions. So it's a continuous improvement. All right, I think we're out of time, but
Oh man, we made it
this is
most of the way through.
yeah, okay. So because the last section is another scary thing, you're telling me to give AI command execution on my system. Like, how can I trust that? I'll just give you the TLDR. There's a bunch of ways to do it. You saw me run Docker. Just put it in Docker, start it in a virtual machine, or if you don't have any of those and you're willing to pay money, like go to someone else. Have DigitalOcean spin up a droplet, or go to AWS or whatever. Like run it on someone else's system. And those are all ways of sandboxing. If you want it closer to like your system, that's when you get into like fine-grained permissions and setting up hooks, and maybe even running, like Claude has a native sandbox feature on certain systems. But
yeah, so if anybody wants to know what I'm currently doing for most of my work, that would be sandbox and like running locally with it on my machine in a sandbox with specific security hooks that Daniel Miesler so graciously provided in PAI. Yeah. So, and I've actually seen it, like the security hooks actually stop stuff before. So, I mean, it's a good strategy, but everything has some risk trade-offs, right? If I was doing something like if I was pulling information like for an incident response off of like some unknown website, I would use Docker and use the coding agent in Docker, because I really think that moving forward into the future, like prompt injection is going to be a big thing with these systems. And
you tell it to go out and research the latest documentation on the web.
Yeah.
You can mostly trust the web, especially if you're sending it to reputable documentation sources. But I mean, what's it called? Supply chain risk, like programming, or like libraries and packages are getting backdoored all the time. How long before people are backdooring documentation websites by putting prompt injection in there?
I bet it's already happening. Like really. An air-gapped island, probably not that much, but I do think that Docker and virtual machines are a real good way to. And if Docker is something new to you, I would definitely encourage you to learn more Docker, because it's very handy.
Have the AI help you.
Have the AI help you.
Start asking about Docker.
Exactly. All right. Well, we almost made it through all that. So I do think that we probably do need to make a workshop for sure.
I think that the entire slide deck was shared in Discord, so you can check out the few things that we didn't cover in depth. But.
Yeah, I didn't want to stop you because I had a feeling people would be like, "Let them talk, let them talk, let them." And
it's like 2 minutes over.
Yeah,
not bad. Well done, guys. Yeah. That's fascinating. Ooh, looks like you're planning a workshop, huh?
I think I would be down with doing one for sure. Yeah. It seemed like other people would come at least check it out. So
yeah.
All right. I don't mean to sign you up for work in front of everybody, Ethan. We do get paid to do them. So
it's true.
So I'm gonna have you do a final thoughts. Ethan, you'll go first. Derek, you'll probably have the same final thoughts as Ethan. Anyway, so Ethan, if you could sum up everything that you talked about today in one final thought, what would it be?
Well, I would address the fears that I had. So you can get started for free. You don't have to know the CLI. There's desktop applications. There are ways to make the output more trustworthy if you approach it the right way. There's frameworks and techniques to do that, and there's ways to sandbox or isolate so that it can run safely on your system. If you're worried about, there's horror stories of Claude decided to rm-rf my home directory, like, or you see people having Claude like remove a production database or whatever. That's where guardrails comes in. Like, you don't give it production access to the database. You have it write scripts that can manage your production database, and you verify the scripts. But anyway, so there's ways to address all of the hurdles that I had, like getting started.
Right. Yeah, I think that I'll take a kind of like a step back at a higher view and say, if you're feeling overwhelmed and insecure, and you're in this, like, oh my gosh, this is going to take my job. Well, okay. So take a step back, take a deep breath. That's probably not what's going to happen. And I think that, we've survived lots of other technology waves, and the cloud was going to get rid of all traditional like servers. Well, that didn't happen, right? So I think that I get the best advice I can give to you is like feeling overwhelmed is normal. I think that's part of information security. We kind of live in that like kind of like chaos and uncertainty. There will definitely be chaos and uncertainty, but the best advice would be just to learn the new tools and technologies and what they can do for you, and don't get too worried about it.
Thank you both. Thank you for sharing knowledge today. Thanks for doing the research and then wanting to tell to other people. I always tell, like, when we're coming up with ideas, like, hey, take something that you know today that you wish you would have known 6 months ago, so that way people can get up to speed where you're at today. So Ethan and Derek,
took that to heart. Thanks for that advice, Jason.
Yeah.
That's what happened here.
Yeah. All right, everybody, we're going to stick around for post-show banter. We'll do a little bit of Q&A. We have some questions, but for now, if you got to go. And then if you'd like to stick around even longer, Tom Smith is here to talk about what it's like to do business with Black Hills. Every once in a while, people are like, you guys offer services? I thought you were like a comic book webcast company.
I thought you did. Yeah, I thought we were a video production company.
All right. Okay. For Gen Z, there was a movie called Wayne's World.
Oh no. There are people who've never heard of WoW. Yeah.
One of the reasons I quit one of the reasons I quit being a teacher is because I was talking about how Top Gun influenced like me as a child to want to get into filmmaking, and I talked about the movie and someone was like, spoilers. And I was like, raise your hand if you've never seen Top Gun. And like 60% of the people raised their hand. I was like, and I quit.
Did you
20 plus?
You told him Goose died?
Spoilers.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Deb.
Yeah.
Goose died.
Goose died. What?
To be a 7-year-old in a theater and watch like Goose, like you didn't.
And I will say is young to watch that movie, Jason.
He cracked his neck on the way out. Okay. All right. I did put a link in the chat at the beginning of the pre-show banter. We posted this link. We had it yesterday for the SOC Summit. It's 2 free hours of lab time each week with step-by-step labs that we're going to continue to add to. We were doing the CTS with the webcast, and we felt like this was a better way of doing it. So every week you get 2 additional hours of lab time where you can go and get that. Now, if you sign up and you're in the United States, that part's important. Deb is going to have something mailed to your house. It's the new SOC survival guide that we just finished, just published, just made available. And we're going to mail it to your house. If you give us your address, if you don't give us your address, no worries. You still get the free lab time.
If you're not in the United States, I'm going to post the digital version. So you can grab it there. There you go.
All right. So here's one of the first questions, Ethan and Derek, and you talked a little bit about tokens. You talked about like budgets a little bit. But if you're trying to like figure out how many tokens do you need, is it 700,000? Is it 4.5 million? How do you figure this out ahead of time?
So that almost sounds like coming from the idea of, hey, I'm going to go buy tokens. Mm-hmm. Like I'm going to pre-purchase a token pack, and it's not really how it works. So in the terms of context management, that's a whole different animal. But it sounds like they're worried about like cost management. Mm-hmm. And one way to deal with cost management is start with a subscription plan. So then it's just a set price every month, and you go until you hit your quota, whatever that plan allows, and then you don't have to worry about like runaway costs. If you're using the API, and you do pay like per million tokens, they usually charge. I think for most providers, you can set limits. You can say, hey, don't spend more than Derek mentioned. We've got a $1,000 limit on our work account, right? Like, so that way, if something does go wild and run off, then you're not spending more than what you're comfortable with. And for your workloads over time, you learn like, okay, this is kind of how much token usage that this takes. Context management is a different animal, where you've got 200K tokens for your context window, or 1 million tokens for your context window. The main way to avoid hitting your context, the limit of your context window and triggering compaction, because this isn't a price concern. This is my agent will forget what it's doing halfway through what it's doing. The main way to handle that is to spin off sub agents. So we touched on agents or sub agents, but like most of the harnesses are smart enough to do it now anyway. Like if there's discrete tasks, it will spin off a separate agent, which has its own block of 200K context. And so that way you're not using up your main 200K context to do this other task. Like it goes and does it, reports back, and it's kind of a way of like getting more context window for isolated tasks.
And when you're on a subscription and you hit that limit, basically the agent will pause and say, hey, you're out of your allotment time. Would you like to wait till 5 p.m. Eastern to continue? And generally you're like, sad face, okay, fine. And then
if you do outside,
yeah, right, I'll go outside and touch grass right now back at 5 o'clock. Or you pay them more money, or you come up with something else. I mean, there's just kind of the nature of how it works at the moment.
So all that sounds there's a bug being killed in the office. Right?
What's happening?
Yeah, it's a bug.
Okay.
The team is killing a bug somewhere in the office.
Good job, Maddie.
I hope it's not them
An
killing
actual
each other.
Murderer. Yeah. We do a lot.
So they're still killing this bug.
Is it a bird flying?
I feel like you need to like move your webcam around and let us see.
Yeah. Are they still going at it? Anyway, do you need me to take over?
I've got a question for Will.
Thank you. Yes, that's great.
So hey Will.
Hey.
We kind of geared this towards people who haven't been using coding agents before, but you have. So I'm curious if you took anything out of this or what you took out of it.
I mean, you pretty much talked about a lot of the stuff that I had to learn over the past couple months. And what
Why didn't you give it earlier?
Sorry, this happened like 6 months ago. No, I thought you guys did a really good, opening intro into it and covered a lot of things people were probably going to struggle with. And my best piece of advice to anybody out there is honestly the best way to learn this stuff is just play with it. Get yourself one of the cheapy accounts and just have it start doing random tasks for you.
Yeah, that's great advice, Will.
Use it even in when I first started playing with it, I started using it to look crap up in video games.
Yeah, so
played with it for a little bit.
Actually, somebody who said that in chat a little bit ago, they said something along the lines of I always sit down and play with it and I don't know what to do. Well, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? Have it go do that, right? And just start using it
and work related. One of our supervisors said it best to me. Think of it like you just got yourself an intern.
And I really don't want to look through these spreadsheets and summarize these for my boss. So can you go do that?
These monotonous tasks over and over and over again, especially when it's stuff like data collection and having to read through hundreds of lines of things. Why not just go, hey, Claude, or hey, ChatGPT, do me a favor, read this and give me the key points.
Because that's what large language models are really good at, right? And so this isn't like a person up in this, we anthropomorphize AI because we don't have words to really describe what's happening. But basically, large language models are really sophisticated pattern matching machines, and they're very good at taking a lot of data and making sense out of it. And so those are the kinds of tasks that you're really going to excel at, is looking at with a coding agent, is looking at data and making sense of it.
Right. I use it mostly in my everyday work to basically just get me the key information I need.
Yep.
And if anybody's ever seen computer logs, they can be a nightmare to look through to get the key information sometimes.
Yeah. So
it saves me a good couple minutes on everything I do, and that time adds up over the day.
I think I have an additional question about the token thing. Also, they got the bug. So you mentioned that in the middle of the automation, it just stops, it forgets, or just doesn't keep going.
Okay. There's two ways it's going to stop, because the the session there's like session context, and then there's like the total context you're using overall for the entire thing. The total context is what's linked to your account, and that's the thing that's always going to have the hard shut off on it and go, hey, you're out of usage at this point. There's also a session context. So a session is basically like each task you're trying to do should be its own individual session in what you're working on. That's what's limited by with Copilot, or not Copilot, but Claude is 1 million context for most things now with the Opus and the Sonnet. Once you hit that 1 million context, it's not a hard stop it'll do. The way Claude handles it is it'll actually summarize everything you've done in that current session, restart a session, and then give the new session that summary.
And it might not, to say it always forgets isn't correct. Like I've had auto compact happen and I didn't anticipate it happening and I just wasn't paying attention and it auto compacts, but then it still did what I wanted it to do, right? There's just the possibility that it might lose track of something. It's essentially that's not hallucination, that's called drift, right? And so it's like drifting away from the original task that I gave it. And so this is actually a problem now, but as we get more and more and more compute and context windows get bigger and bigger, it's eventually probably not even going to be a problem. But
right. And even with the compacting and it going into a new session, at most usually all I've had to do is give it tiny reminders.
I have one last question because we are running pretty long, and then I'm going to bring in Tom Smith to talk about how we can do AI security assessments for your organization. If that is something that you're interested in, that if you're thinking about implementing AI and you want to have a security assessment of your implementation of AI, Derek and the team can help with that. So here's the last question, then we'll move into sales. So is sandboxing plus the additional hooks Derek mentioned limiting the blast radius of supply chain risks?
I would say yes.
That's not, that's not specific to AI. Like if we're talking about supply chain risks, like.
Well, so I think taking a supply chain risk as being it went off and it got like a prompt injection to take all of my private keys and post them to this website or something. Then yes, sandboxing and hooks are a way to prevent that, but it's not I set like some, like I'd have to go make sure I had the right stuff in place. Like I guess one way that I'm looking at it at the moment is isolation is not like in client or coding agent security is not something that's at an industry level completely solved at the moment.
Right. Yeah, I was mainly saying if we're talking about supply chain risk, you can think about how would you limit the blast radius of traditional supply chain risk? Like assume a bad package got installed because it was a dependency. Like, okay, well, now that wherever that's running is compromised, what can it reach? Does it have access to your secrets? Can it delete critical files? Can it exfiltrate data to the internet? It's all the same concerns for sandboxing AI.
Yeah, this actually just happened too. And so like, and Ethan's right. So this is really no different than I'm pip installing Beautiful Soup and I misspelled it and I got a malicious package. Like that's this, it's the same
LLM,
light LLM. Yeah, light LLM.
Yeah.
So
just got compromised like this last week.
Yeah, a couple days ago, light LLM got compromised and was pulled in as part of software building packages by coding agents, and it was exfiltrating like AWS keys, API keys, SSH keys, and so this is a real risk, and it's just going to get worse and worse. So agent security is definitely something. So sandboxing in Docker, NVIDIA actually just came out with NVIDIA Shell, I think, which is probably Docker under the hood or something similar to it. So there's definitely, there's
Kubernetes,
a recognized...
actually.
What's that?
It's Kubernetes.
It's Kubernetes. Oh, okay. So yeah. And so so this is a problem that we're going to have really quickly industry wide, I think. Well, it's probably already a problem.
Okay. So we're going to bring Tom in. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you want to know what it's like to do business with Black Hills Information Security, please continue to stay here. Thank you so much for giving us so much time so far. So Tom, as I listened to this, I joined, I entered in the cybersecurity industry 11 years ago. And when I got into, I had no idea what a pen test meant or Metasploit or a shell or any of the words that I was hearing. And this past year of being a part of all these AI security, AI implementation webcasts reminds me of that 11 years ago.
Mm.
So when
Yeah.
when it comes to Tom, people are coming in and they're like, "Hey, we have this new thing, and we're trying to see if it's secure or not." Like, how do you even help people and potential clients who don't even know if what they're doing makes any sense yet, and if they need to secure it?
Yeah.
Good question.
Well, I mean, there's the old, that's what I'm looking for. There's the old saying about, a bunch of blind men in a room with an elephant, and everybody can feel a little piece of it. Like, this feels like leg, or this feels like a trunk, but nobody can really get their arms around the whole thing and understand it. That's kind of how I think AI security can feel right now. I mean, especially probably for me personally, more so a year ago, perhaps. But I mean, so that's a normal thing. I mean, we're kind of in a phase where everybody's figuring it out, and the experts are not expert yet, and the newbies are really new. And the people who are at intermediate levels of knowledge are really rookies, So I guess it's a way of saying that knowledge of how this stuff works is not widespread.
Okay.
And so consequently, everybody kind of feels that way. So to really answer your question, Jason, like, how do we figure out what we can do for people who come to us asking for help? Is, I mean, it takes a while a lot of times when people come to us and say, like, hey, we have this new AI tool that we're going to be rolling out, and we'd like you guys to try to pen test or whatever. And so oftentimes it takes a lot. It takes probably 5 times as long to figure out exactly what it is that we need to do for them than it does for something that's sort of an industry standard known quantity. Like if someone comes to us and says, like, hey, we need an external network pen test. Like, we know what that is. The client knows what that is. Everybody knows what that is, right? Auditors know what that is. But somebody comes and say, hey, we need an AI pen test. Well, what does that really mean? It's frequent that we get that request. And then it turns out that really what's going to deliver the level of comfort that the client needs is oftentimes going to boil down to, like, check the web application that we've created to operationalize this AI tool that we have. Take a look at that. Look at our guardrails and see if you can get any hallucinations to happen in the chatbot feature, right? And it really can be, that simple a lot of times. So I mean, and that's probably the vast majority of the AI stuff that people bring to us is along those lines. On the sort of offensive security side, William could probably tell you a little bit more about the defensive cybersecurity side, things that we could do. But yeah, that's so, I don't know, Jason, that's a really roundabout way of answering your question.
Yeah.
Not to what you wanted there, but
So if someone wanted to do business with us, what's the first step?
I mean, just reach out. I mean, if somebody wants to reach out to us, like for a pen test, or for general consulting work, or they just want to, like, talk to somebody with more expertise in a particular area than they have, just reach out. They can email me, if you want directly. I don't care. My email's on the website. You can hit the contact us form on the Black Hills Infosec page. And then that'll automatically shoot an email to the team that I work on.
Mhm.
And then we'll invite you to schedule a call, and then we'll get on the phone. Phone. I'm showing my age here. We'll get on a video chat,
I still
team
call it
call.
the phone.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, right. I know.
Dude, I still tape.
I still think of it as like a thing with a curly cord coming out.
That's right. There's actually a question in chat. Do you want me to answer it?
Yeah.
Okay, so for an AI pen test, how do you handle consult customers about potential costs associated with fuzzing and increased token usage? So, like during the scope, like the if there was a question about that, we would discuss it with you. There's actually an OWASP top 10 about unbounded consumption and resource exhaustion. We're well aware that if we're going to do something automated against a large language model, that there is a cost associated with it depending on how things are set up. So we would definitely work with you to figure out. We're not going to stick you with a $20,000 AWS bill and be like, ooh, that sucks to be you. Like, no, that's not how that's going to work at all. Like, if I was the one doing the test, which would maybe be likely anyway, like, we're going to look at the architecture and like, if we thought that you had like a scenario where like, hey, somebody could really spend a lot of money here if you're not careful, we would probably talk to you about that. So, and what guardrails you should put in place to prevent something like that.
I hadn't even thought of that. That's someone, you could just exhaust financial resources of a company by just exploiting their AI.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Unlike other open source things like open source and AI, like just gluing a bunch of open source together and doing a thing is not always the best idea in the AI world.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we do this work. We now let you know we do this work. And if you want to reach out to us to talk about what that work might look like, you know where to find us. Thank you for sticking around for this part. We're keeping it kind of brief today because we've already gone pretty long. Deb, what are your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. We just thank you guys for hanging out and for showing up. Yesterday was crazy. So we're a little low energy today, but we just really appreciate you guys being here and listening to Ethan and Derek share their smarts and be nice humans, be nice to each other, be kind, and help people that are just a couple steps behind you. Help them, bring them on, bring them on. We love you.
Or else the protector of happiness and kindness will come find you.
The defender of happiness.
Neither happy nor kind. Yeah.
But somehow still happy and kind.
Yes.
Well, we're the people that would do the work if you need the work, and we appreciate you being here. We'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye. Ryan. Kill it, Ryan. And then you can just
Fire.
you're done, Ryan. After you're done.
You're done. You've done enough.